I'm a doctor, and there's a lot of work there that I find very fulfilling. And I was very surprised to learn that when I started making content on TikTok, and I would get comments from people who said like, "Oh, I had a really bad day and your video cheered me up." I found that as fulfilling as my work as a doctor. And even if one person feels better from my videos, then I think it's worth it to me.
When many people hear the term influencer, the first person that jumps into their mind might be one of the Kardashians. But the truth is that today, anyone can create content, and many people are doing just that and making a living doing it.
There are so many different journeys that people take to get there. Some of these happen kind of by accident, when people share the things they love with the world and they wake up one day with an audience who just can't wait to hear more.
But this podcast isn't about how to get rich as a creator.
Instead, this podcast is all about getting started.
Cheers to getting started. Hi everyone, today we're really excited to be joined by Jed Paul. Jed creates comedy videos on TikTok that are all about trains. If the train comedy niche sounds a little random to you, all I can say is that you'll have to check it out for yourself. But I 10 out of 10 recommend giving his videos a watch. In this episode, we talk about Jed's love-hate relationship with the Boston-based transit system known as the T, which will resonate for any of you Boston-based listeners out there. We also discuss what it's like cultivating a following that's largely based in one location, how Jed created a mythology/lore with his content, and why he thinks that's key for his engagement. And finally, how he finds time to create content while working 6 days a week as a doctor currently in residency. This was a really fun one, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did. All right, we are live. So typically we like to start with like some warm-up questions. So I guess to kick things off, would be curious to hear, what is the number one train in the world that you would like to ride?
There's so many. I really like high-speed trains. So I've had my eyes set on a lot of the high-speed trains through China recently. My wife is from Hong Kong, so I'd love to ride the train from Hong Kong to Shenzhen. I think it's like 30 minutes long, but just very fast. And Japan is opening up a new maglev train that's going to be the fastest in the world. That won't be open for another 10 years or so, but that's very high on my list as well.
Very cool. If you were going to someplace and you had to eat one cuisine there for the rest of your life, which country, which cuisine would you want to be eating for the rest of your days?
Oh, that's difficult. I really like Japanese food, and I think there's a pretty good diversity of Japanese food, so nothing individually would get bland. Like I could eat sushi and then ramen and then yakitori and just kind of jump around all the different types of Japanese food, and that would be a pretty good cycle for me. I think I'd be very happy.
It's a good range.
Do you have a favorite place to eat in Boston?
There are a couple places I really like. I really like Chalawan. It's in Cambridge, and it is Southeast Asian food. It's also on the Red Line, so it's very easy for me to get to.
I've eaten Chalawan. That's delicious.
Yeah, I love it. I go there for a lot of like anniversaries with my wife or for special occasions, things like that, because it's also not too difficult to get a reservation, which I feel like is hard to come by in Boston.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, maybe to kind of get started on the content creation side, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you got started creating content.
Sure. So for a little bit of background, my wife is in business school right now, and she travels quite a bit. So she goes on a lot of weekend trips, a lot of week-long trips, and just travels internationally. I work as a resident physician, and my schedule's not that open, so I don't have time to travel. And I've always liked trains. So for a long time, just being in Boston, I was asking my wife, "Oh, do you want to take the Green Line with me to the end and see what's there?" And she doesn't like trains as much as I do, so she always said, "No, that sounds like a silly idea. Why would I want to do that?" But one time she was on a trip to South America, and I told her, "Well, if you don't want to come with me, I'm going to do it when you're gone, and I'm going to film it and put it on the internet." And she said, "Who would watch that?" But I did it, and I think my first video got a few tens of thousands of views, which shocked us both. And I kept doing it from there just because I enjoyed it, and other people seem to like it too.
Now, you mentioned a lot of it is local, and a lot of it is because you you're here in Boston while your wife is traveling, but have there been places that you've traveled that you've really enjoyed or gotten on some great trains while you were there?
Oh yeah, I've taken a couple vacations. I get a couple vacations a year, so I've taken some trips. And most recently, I took a trip to India and Sri Lanka, and that was amazing. I mean, we rode trains. I kind of shoehorned some trains into the trip. It was a group trip to India, but I managed to sneak away a little bit and ride some trains. And in Sri Lanka, my wife and I went there alone after India, and we rode one of the regional trains there that went along the coast. It was beautiful. It was a blast. And I think now, because I make these videos, I try even harder to squeeze trains into most of the trips I do, just to have some content creation there, and also because I really enjoy it. So it's been a good experience, but I definitely want to do more international trips, time permitting. There's lots of great trains out there besides the MBTA.
Trains might be a little generous to the MBTA, but I do love them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I'd be curious, for somebody who's not familiar with your channel, how would you describe it to somebody with like zero context?
I would say that I make transit-oriented comedy videos, mostly with deadpan style humor. Very, very deadpan style humor. Um, and I really just ride the train around and comment on it. And some other videos are less train oriented, but it's all, I think my bread and butter is just riding the train and talking about my experience there in a dry way.
Given when you started, was there anything about like all the shutdowns and COVID-19 and anything that really made you want to start creating more content or writing more trains or both?
There wasn't. It was more of my move to Boston, actually. So I moved to Boston about a year after the pandemic started. And during the pandemic, I downloaded TikTok for the first time, I think, like a lot of people. And I just got really into watching videos. I posted some fun videos just like as a personal, on my personal account, basically, following some of the trends and stuff. And you can still see those if you scroll back on my profile. But I didn't start making train videos until after I moved to Boston, because specifically, I came from California, which is not as transit accessible as Boston. One of the things that excited me most about moving here was that I would be able to take public transit more. So I started making videos once, kind of into my first year of residency, once I had the swing of things at work, and I felt more comfortable pursuing things outside of the workplace for fun.
Hmm. You mentioned that you have this dry humor and you're real very funny and it's very deadpan and dry. Would you say that's the real Jed, or is that a Jed that comes out for the content itself?
I think it's a turned up version of myself. I do have a dry sense of humor. I think ever since middle school, I've been very sarcastic too, but with a straight face. I watched a lot of The Office growing up, which I think inspired a lot of my comedy style, and they're very dry there. And in college, I watched a lot of Nathan For You, which is, if you're unfamiliar, a very sarcastic and very dry, deadpan style comedy show too. And a lot of people online have compared me to Nathan Fielder too for my style. So I think I'm inspired by both of those shows, and that's, I guess, caused me to turn up my my deadpan even more than it actually is in real life.
Nice. So you mentioned that you're also in residency. I'd be curious to hear how you find time to create content, because I imagine you're quite busy.
Yes, it is busy. I'll say it's hard sometimes, but we do rotations through residency. So every 2 weeks, I'm in a different part of the hospital or on a different time schedule. And sometimes I get full weekends off. Most of the time I work 6 days a week, about 70, 80 hours a week. But here and there, I'll have 2 weekend days off. That gives me more time to film stuff. If I'm off in the afternoons, for example, because I'm working nights instead, I can film some content then. But I think the thing that makes it easiest for me is that I really frame this as a way to de-stress outside of work. And that makes it a fun activity to do that I don't feel is burdensome to me or something that I feel pressure to do. I really do it because I enjoy it. And that makes the time that it takes worth it.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about your process there too, because I imagine it's not something that you're able to do like on a daily basis. So I'm guessing there's not much of a daily routine, but what is that, is it, when you have the time off and you feel inspired, you do it? Or like, do you wait for inspiration to strike? Are there times where you kind of motivate yourself to do it anyway? Or would be curious to hear a little bit more about kind of how that goes.
I'd say it's a mix of all of those things. I have a list of places I want to go, mostly on the T, and I will just kind of, when I have time, I will go down the list and check things off one by one and film a video about it. But in addition to that, I get a lot of comments from people who watch my videos of ideas of where to go next. So I will also make videos about that if an idea strikes me when I'm reading the comments. And then on top of that, I watch TikTok too, so I see a lot of the trends. And if there's a trend that I really like most recently, there's been this Wes Anderson style video trend that's been going around. And I just decided on a whim that I wanted to film one in that style. So I did it over the course of about 2 days, from like watching the videos to actually posting my own. So those ones, like when there's a trend, there's a little more time pressure to do it, I guess, because you want to still catch the trend. But it's really whenever inspiration strikes me, or when I have free time, I'll go through that list.
A lot of creators really are focused on a particular like niche, a thing that is kind of an identity that they have as a creator and that their followers know them for. Would you say that trains are your niche, or is it something bigger than that? Or how did you go about really settling into that niche if you feel like you have one?
I think trains probably are my niche for now. I say that a little hesitantly because a lot of my popular videos actually aren't about trains. I think the ones that are consistently viewed are my videos about trains, but the most popular ones on my profile actually are not train related. Like, I think my most popular video is one where I decided to grow a mustache over the course of a month while my wife was gone and then fly to where she was to surprise her with it, and she hated it. So then I shaved it immediately. And there was also this other rabbit hole that I went down earlier, like last year, where people didn't think my wife was real because I filmed so many videos without her, but talking about her. And then I leaned into that a little bit and showed some kind of sketchy evidence that I actually do have a wife. And all of those videos were more popular than a lot of my train videos. So I would say train is my niche and it's my bread and butter. And it was the first thing that I tried that really took off. But, again, it's like I look through the comments and I see what people are talking about and I'll respond to that. And that also pushes me into other areas where I can make videos that are also popular.
Yeah. And you've mentioned how making those videos is a release. It's a form of relaxation outside of your work, and it's fun. How does it feel to have 50,000 people watching you have fun that way? That it's you're sharing that with such a big audience. How does that feel?
It's a very humbling experience. I don't think that I'm really worthy of having 50,000 people that interested in my life, but it's been a very fun process just to grow that following. And now I'm at the point where sometimes, actually pretty often, because my following's so concentrated just in the Boston area, when I'm walking around on the streets, people will stop me and say, "Hey, I really like your videos. Thanks for making them." And that always makes me feel very good. I think no matter what size your following is, I've heard this from people who have millions of followers even, you can get imposter syndrome or get a little stuck in it and feel like, I have so many followers, but my videos aren't always getting the number of views I expect. And I've seen some good videos that also put it into context. For like 50,000 followers, for me, my college stadium held 50,000 people. So I'm just imagining like a full stadium of people who are aware enough of my content to be willing to follow me. It's a very humbling experience. And I'm just happy that a lot of people enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you have, any plans to expand to new types of content, or how do you sort of think about growth, if that's a goal at all? Yeah, I'd be curious to kind of hear a little bit more about where you plan to go from here, if anywhere, or if you're kind of just, plan to kind of keep doing the same thing for now.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. I think that growing beyond a certain level or growing to a certain monetization status for especially TikTok channels, it seems like it requires exponentially more work than growing a small following, at least in my mind. So, like, if I were to try to get hundreds of thousands of followers, most of the content creators I see who do that post videos multiple times a week. They have multiple other channels like on Instagram and YouTube where they're also posting videos. They're doing a lot of brand deals to make money off of it too. And all of those are extra work that, to me, it adds that aspect of there's more pressure to make the videos, and I feel like I would enjoy it a little less. So I'm happy just growing kind of as I make videos that I enjoy and sharing them. And if other people like that, then they'll follow me, but I'm not aggressively pushing to grow my following in any way. I am trying somewhat to grow on other platforms. Like, I upload my videos now to Instagram because I have a lot of friends who don't like TikTok and don't want to download it. So I post basically like re-uploads for them, kind of for Instagram. But I tend not to make specific content for other platforms, which I think is another thing that you really need to do if you want to push aggressively to grow. I've also heard that YouTube pays the most. So if I really want to make money off of it, I'd try more to get onto YouTube. But the style of YouTube video is just very different from the short form TikTok style videos. So I think that would be the most effort for me. So I've been a little reluctant to try that as well.
You over the course of your videos, you've almost built up a bit of Jed Lore, teaching us about old Rachel and new Rachel, and like that this peek into your life. How much do you think that's been a part of how you've built a following, getting people excited about or just interested in like you and your life, and new Rachel, I'm sure, is adorable for a lot of followers. But how much of that is the appeal for your followers?
I think there's a good appeal to that. I think a lot of the reason that people engage with content online is because they like to feel like they know the content creators on a little bit of a more personal level. So sharing more background is always helpful in that. And again, it's when people ask questions, I answer it, and that's how this lore has kind of been built. So it's me engaging with my followers and my followers engaging with me in kind, which is a really fun process. I feel like TikTok is very good for building a supportive community around creators, like with their followers. So it's been a really good experience for me.
Is there anywhere where you've like felt like you needed to like draw that line between like what's personal, or where you don't kind of want to share that with like your followers on TikTok, or have you kind of not run up against that in any scenarios yet? Would be curious to hear a little bit more about how you strike that balance.
I don't share a whole lot of personal information about myself. I think I just share it in little droplets, and I'm still in character when I share it. So I actually haven't done any videos where I'm just my normal self smiling and blinking and things like that on my online. I also don't talk at all about my career outside of like social media. I don't talk about how I'm a doctor or anything, because it just doesn't seem, it's not relevant to the kind of content I create. It's not a secret or anything. Like, if you Google me, I think it's one of the first things that comes up, but I just haven't felt the need to share it. I did pretty early on have some commenters who were very frequently posting about the fact that I was a doctor on my videos, which made me a little uncomfortable, because they just kind of went out of their way to mention it in every single comment. That hasn't happened as much recently though. And I don't even know if it's like, it's not something I'm ashamed of or anything. It's just not relevant. So I haven't brought it up.
You, Ariel, you've mentioned that Boston is very much a big part of this. It's about the MBTA with a lot of your content and the Boston area and seeing sites in the Boston area. How how have you experienced much community in Boston around how we all feel about the MBTA and its pain points and that the beautiful frustration we all feel with our MBTA system?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have a lot of frustration with the MBTA, and that's what a lot of my videos are about, sharing those in a sarcastic way. And I think that's why I've been able to grow a following. I think that's why my videos are popular. Like, I think if I did this in other cities to start, maybe I wouldn't have grown as much, but I just did it at a time where there was a lot of frustration around the T, and T is so central to Boston's culture as opposed to public transit in other cities, that it was a ripe opportunity, I guess. Good luck for my channel to take off.
Do you think that with Boston, there's an opportunity for more community of content creators as well? And have you met any content creators around Boston, or are you the one content creator you know in real life?
No, there's a huge community of content creators in Boston, most of whom are larger than I am. I think I'm pretty small by Boston standards, honestly. But I haven't met up with too many other Boston influencers. I think a lot of my content goes out to more of the transit community in other cities even. So there's a lot of people from New York, for example, who post a lot about public transit and a lot of informational videos there. So I watch a lot of their stuff. I've DM'd some of them. I have plans to meet up with some people next time I go to New York, and like other transit people across the country. So that's the community I'm more keyed into on TikTok than the local Boston one. But I also follow a lot of Boston focused creators, just haven't had the opportunity to talk to them yet.
That makes sense. I mean, I would imagine that like the fact that you are somewhat localized and that's a lot of where your followers kind of are based would be a ripe opportunity for brands to be reaching out to you like all of the time. Have you found that there are kind of maybe Boston-based brands that are interested in collaborating with you in some way? Is that something that you are thinking about in any capacity, or kind of staying away from that now from a monetization perspective?
I do brand deals from time to time, and I think the local ones are the ones I tend to do more. So I've done, for example, 2 videos now with a local startup called Nobi that helps with apartment hunting. And they reached out to me pretty early on when I first started my TikTok. Actually, we've just been in communication since. But because they were local, I think they saw my videos more and they knew about me. And also, it made it easier to make a video in my usual style, like taking the train somewhere. But this time I did it to view an apartment with them. And that also, it's always easier to do a brand video when it matches your own style as a creator. And I think they were very open to doing that. And then I've also had larger brands do it too, like Dunkin'. But again, it's a very New England, Boston heavy brand. So that worked out well for me too, where I took a train to the first Dunkin' as part of a promotion I did for them. And that also turned into a really nice video. I get outreach from other companies a lot too, especially now that I've passed 50,000. I think maybe there's just some automated gatekeeping that they do where they send more outreach to creators of over 50,000 followers. But I think, like, I tend not to accept partnership deals with companies who seem a little more generic about their outreach and who don't seem to know my video style as well. Because sometimes I get emails from companies that just says like, "Hey, Jed, you won," for example. Like, they just kind of put your TikTok tag in their opening line, and then they send a generic email about what they do. And then if you click on their content brief that they send you, it says like, "We want a video where someone is smiling and very cheerful and talking about our product in a happy way." And I'm like, well, that's not what my videos are about at all. So clearly you didn't actually watch my stuff. So I think when the companies who are reaching out to me have seen my work and convey that they understand the style of video that I make, it makes it a lot easier to do a brand deal with them.
Do you have any horror stories or just conversations that have gone bad working with brands or things that fell apart?
No, I don't actually, because I think it doesn't get to that stage. Like if they seem like they're not going to be a great company to work with, or they don't understand my style or anything like that, I think the conversations just don't move on past email. So all the brands I've worked with have actually been really great and very understanding and very flexible with the kind of style of the video that they want. So it's worked out really well, actually.
Um, if How much are you making as a content creator with these partnerships? So how much are folks paying with you to work with you when they reach out?
It's pretty variable. I tend to set my price high because, again, I only have 1 day off per week, and I don't want to spend time making a video that I don't actually enjoy too much if I'm not being compensated what I see is fairly. So the price I usually quote to companies is $2,000 for a video, and it's open to negotiation. Um, I know content creators who charge more. I know content creators who charge less, but to me, that seems like a fair price. And then, if I really like the brand, then I'll we'll negotiate something lower than 2,000. Or there's other ways of being paid too. So like I'll get a flat fee for a certain amount, but they'll also pay me for downloads of their app or like referral links that people click. Um, or I'll just get more free product from them, something like that. So there's ways to negotiate, but usually the flat fee that I quote people is 2,000. And I don't do brand deals that often, so it's not something that I like make a really good living off of. I definitely couldn't survive off the number of brand deals that I do for that price. But it's good, like extra compensation on top of my salary for my actual job. So it's it's fun, and it pays a little bit. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about like how you think about like, and I don't know if this is a factor in your consideration when you decide to work with a brand, but like whether it would resonate with your audience and like kind of figuring out the right mix of like regular content versus like brand deal posts. Like, and we've talked with some creators who worry about being seen as like a walking advertisement. And that's one of the considerations that they have. It sounds like you're nowhere near that stage of it, and that you're thoughtful about like the brands that you work with. But be curious to hear how you sort of strike that balance or think about that.
Yeah. And I do think about it a lot. I I only post about 4 videos per month because I post once a week on average. So even if I do 2 brand deals in a month, then that's 50% of my videos, which does seem like a lot to me. So I try to have a pretty good cadence, like maybe 25% of my videos I could say I'd ideally like to be brand deals, maybe even fewer. The other thing I think about is that my branded videos, because you label them as an advertisement, they tend to get a little bit less engagement and fewer views than videos that are like my usual style or just my train videos. So even if I'm doing 25% of my videos being branded ones, it'll be closer to like 5 or 10% of my total views for that month that are actually on my branded content. So that makes me feel a little bit better about it. So a lot of my followers like wouldn't even know that I did a promoted post, for example. But I also, again, feel much better about posting branded content if it's very in line with the content I would have produced anyway. Like if it's a train trip somewhere that is just sponsored by another company. So that's the style of video that I'm trying to lean more into, where like, say I just do a usual train trip, but I mention, oh, by the way, I'm wearing this shirt that this company wants me to promote, and it's very comfortable or something like that. And it's just kind of an aside. I actually, as a joke, before I had any brand deals, would do a lot of videos like that at the beginning where I would just casually mention a brand, pretending like they were sponsoring me, even though they weren't, to show people that I was sponsorable. And I think because I set it up in that way, it wouldn't be too weird if I kept doing that and was actually sponsored now. So a lot of jokes I can turn into monetization too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Could you tell me a little about your actual process of when you're making the videos? Like, how do you shoot them? Is it literally you and your iPhone, or do you use any other equipment, or just like what's your creative process there?
Well, for my Wes Anderson video, for the first time I used a tripod, I bought it on Amazon the day I decided I wanted to do that trend and had it next day delivered so I could film some tripod shots on the red line. But for the rest of my videos, it's just me holding my phone out in front of me, pretty close to my face, honestly, and talking into it. So it's very low tech and low effort, which also makes it easier to produce these videos because doesn't, I don't need to go through a lot of fancy equipment or anything like that. Um, and then I usually use my AirPods just for a microphone. The problem is that when there's wind, which is pretty often in Boston, the sound gets distorted. So in the future, I would probably get a microphone with a windsock or something on it. I think that's my ideal next purchase, but it works well enough to not have to use any extra hardware.
Do you feel comfortable shooting a ton of videos of yourself and talking with your phone when you're literally in public on the train surrounded by other people? Did you have to get comfortable with that?
No, it feels very weird to me even now. And I tend to record a lot of my intros on streets where I don't encounter too many people. So I can just walk around empty streets and talk about what I'm going to do. And then on the train, I don't talk. I just film myself in short bursts on the train and tend not to talk too much on the train itself. And then I, again, talk after I get there where it's empty. So I I do avoid talking to my phone in public. Uh, I I I have less shame than other people, I'll say. So when I have to, I'll just do it. But I've also noticed that when I'm talking to my phone, I think my voice is a little more distinctive too. So people will pull me over more when I'm talking to my phone and they'll be like, "Oh, are you Jed from TikTok? Or you're that guy who writes trains? Are you filming a video right now?" And I always love being approached by people, but I I also don't want to draw too much attention to myself in that way. Because once someone mentions that, other people look at me and they're like, what? Is this guy someone I should pay attention to? And they stare at me for a long time trying to place me. And that makes me more uncomfortable than anything else.
Um, when you look down the road for you and your content creation, do you have any aspirations about the content creation in your life and like things that you'd really love to do, or like what would success look like beyond what you've already got if you have any goals in mind there as a creator?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I already feel much more successful in this endeavor than I ever thought I would be. Like, again, having 50,000 followers is very humbling for me, and I'm very happy about that. I would love to grow to get past 100,000 followers. If it requires extra work to the point that I feel really stressed doing it, I don't think that's a goal I want. But I I think my goal is a mix of kind of growing my following, but also maintaining the mindset that I have right now of I really enjoy doing this. And I don't know exactly how to achieve that. So for the time being, I'm just continuing to do what I do and hoping that it works out.
When you first started posting, did you think any of this was going to happen? And did any of this journey surprise you with how much your content's really popped off with people?
Yes, it all surprised me. Because again, riding the train itself is a very boring activity. So I didn't think that people would be so into watching it. And I think people like my style of humor too, which goes along with it. But it it definitely has grown beyond what I expected. And then this whole idea of people really understanding the Jed lore that you talked about is the most surprising thing to me, where people care enough to talk about old Rachel versus new Rachel. For the people who don't know about that, old Rachel is my wife, and new Rachel is the cat that I got to replace her when she moved away for a short period of time. And like it's at the point now where sometimes I mention old Rachel, someone says in the comments, "Who's old Rachel?" And then someone else will comment, "Oh, old Rachel is Jed's wife and new Rachel is Jed's cat. Here, watch this other video explaining that." So I don't even have to answer too many questions myself anymore. People just do it on their own. And again, Like I'm very surprised about the community that has been built around it, where people know enough about me to like, and people will talk about me, even separately from me actually engaging in that way. Like I don't have to comment; other people will comment and just comment back at each other.
Yeah, you mentioned too earlier that like you felt like TikTok does a really good job of helping build features that sort of cultivate that community building. What do you think it is about TikTok where people, you can see that kind of level of engagement or community versus other platforms? And yeah, I guess I'll pause there.
I'm not exactly sure what it is about TikTok. I think there's something to do with the algorithm in that it understands what people want to see. So it gives them content that they want to see and that would resonate with them. And because of that, no one is watching stuff that is really, I guess, antithetical to their beliefs or antithetical to like the kind of content they would enjoy, which is problematic in its own way. It can create echo chambers, but for, comedy train content, it really makes it so that the people who watch my videos are the ones who would like it. And I've noticed it because when I post videos on TikTok, all the comments are very supportive. Like I've been very, very surprised of how nice people are on TikTok to me, because I used to, in middle school, I would upload some videos to YouTube for fun, and people would comment like this is terrible, like go away, things like that. People say very mean things to me in middle school, and my content was obviously different back then too, and not as good. But and even on Instagram, I get more haters, I feel like, on my posts there, just because people aren't as familiar with my niche. So TikTok is, I think it's TikTok's algorithm. But I also want to acknowledge that there's a lot of privilege I have too, being on the internet as a man, I've seen, because I follow a lot of female content creators who don't have the same support or don't experience the same like unbridled positivity that I do online in their comments. Like people get a lot of comments about their appearance that I like. No one comments on my appearance, right? And even when I post stuff with my wife, the first thing people talk about is how like they think she's beautiful and things like that, which is positive, but they still comment on her appearance. And I think that as a male on the internet, there's a lot less pressure for things like that, and people tend to just focus more on the information and the style and like whatever content I'm producing rather than what I look like. And unfortunately, that's not the case for female producers.
If you had one lesson or thing that you've learned from all of this that you could take back to yourself, either 2 years ago when you just started posting on TikTok, or all the way back to Jed posting on YouTube in a past life, what would that lesson be like? What would be the advice you would give to your younger self there?
Keep at it. Just keep trying things, and you'll find a niche. Don't listen to the people who are saying mean things, and keep doing it for enjoyment, I think, is the big thing. Because I think it's very easy to get dejected or feel like you shouldn't be making videos if you get a lot of hateful comments. But the other thing I've noticed is that even when people don't agree with your content or when people don't like it, there's always some people who do. And there's like, even if there's a vocal minority of people who are going to lash out, there might be a silent majority of people who still really like it and who are engaging with your content. And even if there's like one person who really likes it, it seems worth it to me to make. Like I've gotten, I'm a doctor, obviously, and there's a lot of work there that I find very fulfilling, of like talking with patients and helping treat them and making them feel better. And I was very surprised to learn that when I started making content on TikTok, and I would get comments from people who said like, "Oh, I had a really bad day, and your video cheered me up." I found that as fulfilling as my work as a doctor. So there's lots of ways to make people feel better and to do things that you find fulfilling. And even if one person feels better from my videos, that seems worth it to me.
I love that.
It's a lot. Really like that. Jed, what do you have on the horizon? Is there anything coming up that you're excited about or that you want to plug?
My Instagram channel, you can follow, or my Instagram profile, as I'll call it. You can follow me on Instagram at Jedio1. I'm on TikTok at Jedio1. I just made a Cameo too, because enough people were reaching out to me to make personalized videos that I decided I should probably just formalize it and have a platform where I can do it instead of just like DMing people videos of me, giving them shout outs. So Cameo's the newest thing that I'm jumping into. If you want, you can book me.
Nice.
Awesome. I just might do that for James. He really is a fan. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jed, for being on. Maybe we can wrap there. But yeah, this was great.